Tell me, did you listen to the last podcast? You will.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the Politipop Podcast, the podcast where we take your favorite pop culture media and discuss the social and political themes within. I'm your host, Mike Booch, and I'm sitting here with my colleague,
Joe.
Just like Sade, only needs one name. That's all it takes. If you are looking to connect with us, feel free to contact us on Twitter at PolitiPopPod. You can send us your opinion, send us your thoughts, send us your feedback on politipopcast@gmail.com. Find our show notes and sources at politipoppodcast.wordpress.com. Listen to us on SoundCloud, listen to us on iTunes. Hell, just find a way to listen to us. This is part 2 of the Batman vs. Superman episode and its correlation to the War on Terror. Last time, if you haven't listened yet, we spoke a little bit about Superman's side of things, and today we are going to speak about the Batman side of things. So, Joe, do you think that it's fair to say that Batman in this whole instance, in this whole story, represents the United States in general, or does he just represent a specific group? Or a specific group of people that would benefit from this war or seek to...
I think he's definitely a symbol for America. I mean, he's what people would look at as the Old West Justice, the guy that takes the justice to his own hands to make things right that he sees wrong. So I definitely think he's seen as like America. He's also like the tough guy. You know, he's like the John Wayne kind of a guy. You know, he's always, never backs down from a fight, even when, the alien tells him not to come out. He's going to come back out on purpose.
Well, listen here, partner.
Exactly.
I'm the Dark Knight. All right. I pretty much thought that too, that Batman is the personification of the United States, of all of its ire, of all of its courage, of all of its indignation in this allegory of the War on Terror, which is really the best way to stomach this film, once again, is to see it as an allegory. It makes it a lot easier to watch. So, at the beginning of the film, Bruce Wayne starts off with this whole monologue about there was a time before there were perfect things, there were diamond absolutes, but things fall, things on earth, and what falls is fallen? Wait, really? What the fuck does that even mean? Sorry, I took it right from IMDb, so it's just weird to me. What falls is fallen. It's fallen down, dude. I guess he means that when it has fallen, it can't be picked up.
Right, it doesn't come back.
Bad things, like he's referring to his parents. Do you think that this whole idea of, this whole nostalgia of there being a time when things were great, when they were perfect, when they were diamond absolute, does that remind you of the Make America Great Again nostalgia?
Oh, yeah, and that's definitely a theme you see throughout America. You'll always see, because they say it now about when they want to go back to the great times of Reagan. Then they wanted to go back to the times of the 50s. I mean, if you talk to the grandparents in the 50s, they talk about how their children were out of control after Elvis. It wasn't like the good old days when they were kids, because they're like, they're the Great Depression generation and they went through the hard times. And everybody always sees it, as, when they grew up, it was always better for them.
That's a theme that I found that's usually pretty common. This theme that where we are now is this state of chaos and that the world's going to hell, because even if you just want to go with the parents being like, oh, kids these days and everything, like all these millennials, right? There's all this hate for the millennials, because they don't want to work and they love art and they are allergic to gluten and shit like that.
Right.
And
they all got trophies.
Exactly. Oh yeah, they all get those participation trophies and shit like that.
They don't earn what they get.
Oh my God!
Right.
But then even before that, it was this generation of kids, they're listening to rock music and rap music, and it's terrible. And
I mean, my Generation X got it from our parents that were the baby boomers. They listened to what they listened to, like, doo-wop in the 50s and 60s and Motown, and we grew up listening to, NWA and stuff like that, and Pearl Jam, and the whole grunge kind of movement, and like I said, yeah. So they're always saying, your music is crap, my music was good, and then I'm sure if you talk to their parents, they thought Lawrence Welk was good and Elvis was crap and corrupting kids, and
of course,
so it's always gonna happen that way. You know what I'm saying? It's always that nostalgia for the lost days that never really happened.
Didn't they censor Elvis? In some recordings, they would only put him from waist up.
Yeah, waist up because of his magical pelvis. Yes.
Yes,
and Elvis the pelvis.
That was way before people were talking about bitches and hoes.
Yeah.
You had Elvis the pelvis.
Yeah.
So when we start at the whole beginning of this film, we talk about Batman's motivation for doing what he wants to do, which is stop Superman, and why he wants to stop Superman. The whole idea is that he was there in the middle of the Metropolis, I think they just called it the event, right? The Metropolis event, the disaster, in which Zod and Superman leveled most of the city in their title fight. I love that we got to see his view of this whole thing, because in the Man of Steel movie, we got to see Superman struggling and going through buildings and all this other stuff. And we only got to see a little bit of what was going on the ground with Perry White and the intern, and what is Michael Kelly plays him? Crap, I forgot his name, but he's like an ongoing character in the Lombard. Yeah, Lombard. Yeah, he plays this dick. So you got to see a little bit of that, but from Bruce's point of view was awesome. I love the whole idea that he's this big CEO of Wayne Enterprises and he didn't have to be there, and you see him arrive in a chopper. He gets right in that car that was so amazingly product placed, and he's going through this whole disaster. And there's very much this, once again, we talked about it last episode, this 9/11 imagery, in which there's this huge dust cloud, and there's as Kevin Smith put it, right, the worst thing that's ever happened. And when everyone's running away from it, he's running toward it. And he was, such a first responder there. And it was just from the trailers, I remember, it was one of the most iconic parts of this movie, is everyone's running away and there's danger and the unknown and fear and terror. And Batman is the first person to run right into it.
Right.
And I thought that was great. I thought that was a good call on their part.
I definitely think it plays into that whole him being like I guess like I said, being with Superman being the alien from the outsider, he's the ultimate American, where he's running. He's at least going to save the day. He's going to run into the storm, like you said. Everybody's running away from the event, and he's running towards it. He's like that ultimate guy. He's going to ride to the rescue, whether if it was the Western, he would have been on a horse riding towards town to face off whatever it is, or whatever happens to be, like all the different motifs we've had. He's that guy that's going to ride in, and he's going to be the one that saves it. But of course, because it's America, he's got to be the ultimate capitalist, running in and getting all, I don't care how much money I'm worth. Oh, it's about the people. I'm going to go save everybody. And he runs into the cloud, like you said, and disappears into the darkness of the chaos. And he's going to try to do what he can to save as many as he can.
Yeah, and it wasn't in the theatrical edition, but in the extended edition, they really hammer it home, where that whole dust cloud hits, and you see an entire line of school children, I guess, that were on a field trip going through, and then there's the one girl whose mom died in Wayne Tower, and I guess it was Wayne Tower, and Batman grabs her, and he looks up at the sky at the shit that's going on with Superman and Zod, and you just see this fire burning in him,
right?
And he's not. The thing is, he's not wrong, and I like the idea that you could see his side of things. But honestly, this whole thing could have just been settled by the two of them talking it out. That's all it would have had to have been.
Right.
Was him being like, "Hey, dude, are you killing people?" And Batman's like, "I mean, not a lot of people, not, And then for Batman to be like, "Hey, did you leveled in the whole city, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, but I'm trying to do the right thing." That's all.
Right.
All it would have been. It was a huge misunderstanding.
Well, maybe they should have had a little sit down at the Justice League, and straighten it out, maybe. But like I said, that's why I think the use of it looks like the same footage from both movies, but the change of camera angle. So now you're down on street level, like Batman looking up at them cutting buildings in half with their heat ray and then flying through them, and so you can take in the entire giant scope of the destruction. Like I said, then you don't really understand the kind of the fire that's burning him, that, this is my city that I've protected is being absolutely decimated, like you said, brings it into focus and shows the gravitas of it.
Yeah, and that's a great theme that we're going to explore a little bit later on. This whole idea of this powerlessness, because I think that was a big part of it. If he could have gotten up, saved that girl and been like, all right, I'll be right back, and then fly up in the sky and fight the both of them, he would have done it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But he can't.
Right.
And I think that is the worst thing, for something terrible to be happening and you can't do anything about it.
The helplessness, certainly.
Exactly. Now, one thing I noticed is that, and this is not just about Batman in the film, it's about Batman in general, right? And I had this discussion with my dad over dinner, because that's the kind of house I grew up in, was the nerd house, was how being Batman is a very selfish pursuit. I believe it is. Bruce Wayne, if he dedicated his resources and time to the core of crime in Gotham City, to the disenfranchised people, and to better mental health programs, and to helping to get a more efficient police force, 2, a more ethical police force, and 3, a better funded police force, Gotham could be saved. But because this little boy lost his parents, he needs to go out and do it himself.
Right. I think he's fighting that battle for everybody. I think he sees it as. There's no other
in his
kid,
mind, yes.
Right, deals with that. But like you said, I think if he thinks on a larger scale, that would certainly be the better ways to get, the Joker, some psychiatric sessions and stuff.
Well, yeah, and the one thing I noticed is that he doesn't really seem to fight unless he can fight another person, unless he has a physical representation of what's wrong.
Right.
And it's so black and white to him in some cases, that this is crime and I need to beat this thing, which I think is so very reminiscent of the United States as well, right? That it's so much easier for us to say, oh, those are the bad guys, we are going to fight them, or these are the criminals, we need to lock up these criminals. Never mind the shitty neighborhoods they grew up in, or never mind the fact that the crime rate went down when abortion was legalized, and now we're putting all these stops to Planned Parenthood and everything like that, which will definitely see an increase in crime and unwanted births and pregnancies and all this other stuff. How much do you think the U.S. helps the homeless and the starving of its, when we're talking about disenfranchised people, the homeless and the starving of its own country, while they send more weapons to the army and more and to the law enforcement and to militarize them?
I think it's the same thing. He's dealing with the after effects as opposed to the causes. So instead of, like you said, instead of Batman, or in this case the United States government, instead of putting it into things like, breakfast for kids in school, for after school programs, for, like you said, psychiatric, help for people that have mental illness, stuff like that, they're dealing with it after the fact. So they're dealing it after the guy that has mental illness acts out and he gets arrested because he isn't on his meds, or something happens and he gets set off. So they're always dealing with the effects of it instead of dealing with the actual problems. And I think that's what the major thing is, because I think they essentially don't want to deal with them. I think by allowing them to continue, you'll have a distraction. You know what I'm saying? So, you don't ever let it get to a point where the general populace will revolt like it did, let's say, in the 60s, where you had people that acted out on a much larger scale, which towards the end of the Vietnam War and stuff like that, and some big changes. I think they do keep it, in a sense, they'll keep it bottled up to a certain level, but they'll always keep it going because it always allows that, have that distraction to be like, all right, it's those people's fault why it's happening. You know what I'm saying? In the 80s, it was because, people were on crack. That was the problem. Or if it was in the 70s, there was heroin. So they'll always allow there to be this kind of like allowance of like a reservoir of what they'll always see as the evil, to continue to flow. That's just like, just like in Batman, where, these guys always get put away in Arkham and they all seem to get away.
It's a revolving door of Arkham.
You're Bruce Wayne, man. Build a little better prison.
Yeah.
And they'll never get out. You'll solve the problem. Like you said, he doesn't deal with, why is the Joker in this situation? Why does he become who he is? You're dealing with him after he's become the Joker. But if your dad, when he was alive before he died, or you, start doing, more so than just funding orphanages, why not do something to stop the fact that these kids are becoming orphans?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So, if getting them, whether it's healthcare, in the real world now, healthcare, better protection during at work so people aren't getting hurt, whether it's in coal mines or whatever it is, You know what I'm saying? Get these things in place that help protect people so that you don't have these, essentially externalities that are created by these problems that you have. So you get all these, like you said, unwanted pregnancies because you don't have Planned Parenthood providing, things like, like birth control and stuff like that. So you're basically dealing with it after the fact. The horse is out of the barn already. The costs grow exponentially than if you would have dealt with it to begin with. If you would have gotten a checkup, it's a lot better, than catching it early than finding out 3 years later the person's got cancer. But if you would have done a screening and a mammogram,
boom,
you would have been so much cheaper, $50 versus thousands.
Yes.
But like I said, they never think that far ahead. They're always looking at, penny wise, pound foolish. I'll save a penny today, even though it'll cost me $10 tomorrow. So that seems like the major problem, that they never seem to deal with things at the root before things grow. They always deal with it once it gets to a certain level, and they have to deal with it.
Well, yeah, similarly, did you know that homelessness has actually gone down? Which is nice, more people have homes, but welfare assistance is actually being sought by working families, and that percentage has risen for welfare assistance from 42 to 51% since last year. So this is attributed to a wage problem.
Right.
Right? When we're talking, we need a decent, livable wage.
Right.
Damn it, 2 Bernie impersonations. I'm killing it here. Meanwhile, we have all these people that you don't want to help out the welfare queens,
right.
But B, you don't want to provide a decent living wage.
Right.
Meanwhile, we can afford, in 2016, $274.9 million went to what is called justice assistance. I mean, that's incredible. You can spend that much on now. Like I said, listen, I don't mind if it's a protective thing. If you're getting better Kevlar, better armor, more armored vehicles and stuff like that for law enforcement, that's fine. But in a lot of cases, they're being militarized.
Right.
What war are you fighting exactly?
Right. Who are you fighting against?
Yes. The idea is to protect and to serve. And if you go in with a mentality of this is war and it's me against you from the get-go, things aren't going to turn out well. Right. You need to be protected, but do you need to go into everything with riot gear?
Right. It used to be just the large cities with a SWAT team.
Yeah.
Where now everybody has, the armored, vehicles, and they have, like you said, the full Kevlar gear set up with the face masks and the shields, and like you said, you end up looking like an occupying force that you're moving into these neighborhoods as opposed to, like you said, the normal, what they used to be called like the neighborhood cop that would know all the people and
know everyone's name, swing around his billy club.
Right, or even like sometimes you'll see something nice, like the other day on Facebook they had the cop that was in that little dance contest against a little kid.
Oh, I love
where
this.
Where you're making that connection, whereas this kind of creates, not only the physical barrier and having all this armament separating you, you're also creating, this intimidation factor, which also creates this, separation and the fear factor with the people. So then they start acting out, because out of fear, and just kind of just escalates everything and creates higher tension.
Yeah, I think it's important to it's important to really tackle the problem at its source. And similar to where our country stands, Batman himself is a very reactionary person. That when he sees Joe Chill kill his parents, in this case, in my storyline, I still don't believe Joe Chill was the person that killed his parents. In my storyline, he never finds out who did it. And so every night when he goes out, every villain is treated as if they were Joe Chill.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool way to look at it, right?
That's a never-ending saga then.
Well, exactly. That's really it. And that's the whole point of him letting Dick Grayson get vengeance.
Right.
Dick Grayson does find the person that... Well, Batman finds the person. Yeah, and he gets justice. Batman, as a kid, I think ever since his parents died, he's been stuck in a perpetual state of childhood. Why else would you put on a costume and go out and do what you do? And additionally, if you were doing it because you felt no one else could do it, that's fine. But don't tell me there's not a style to it. Why does everything have to be shaped like a bat?
Right.
Everything, dude. You have to have the fast cars. You have to have the big dinosaur in your cave. You have to have the spaceship. You have to, literally, he's living the life that a kid would live.
Right. And he never has adult relationships for the most part either.
He's always hanging out with kids. Yeah. He's got Alfred,
right,
who he treats like shit in most stories, and he always has his Robin. Dick Grayson, grows up to be Nightwing.
Right.
Jason Todd grows up to be Dead, and then he grows up to be the Red Hood. Tim Drake grows up to be Red Robin. Bruce Wayne stays as Batman. Everyone gets to grow up, except for him.
Right.
Even in Batman Beyond, he specifically says in his mind he doesn't call himself Bruce. That's not his internal voice.
Right.
He's Batman, through and through. So, in his head, he sees Joe Chill do what he does. He sees this guy kill his parents, and he thinks that's what I have to stop. But don't stop the desperation that caused him to kill someone for a wallet and a pearl necklace.
Right.
So that's that's very. I think that's very telling. Now there is a part at the beginning of the movie where Lois Lane is talking to this warlord in Africa, and she asks him if he is a terrorist. And by the way, point for feminism when he says, "Oh, they sent a woman." She goes, "I'm not a woman. I'm a journalist." I really like that whole thing.
Nice.
She's her job first. But she asks him, "Are you a terrorist?" And he says that he is not a terrorist. And he questions who pays for the drones that fly overhead. Who's the real terrorist? Right? At one point in the extended version, the U.S. sends a missile to kill one dude, despite the fact that it's going to hurt a bunch of people at the beginning of the movie. And Superman is the one to stop it. Who is the real terrorist? Batman, if he's representation for the U.S. Is Batman a terrorist?
I think Batman's the vigilante.
Okay.
I mean, he does kind of create a reign of terror, but on the criminal underground. But he does it in a more vigilante way. So he does it... I guess you can always look at it as the dichotomy of the freedom fighter and the terrorist, because from his mind, he is the good guy. Like I said, but if you're the cops, you don't see him as a good guy. And that's why they're always...
You shoot at him with a shotgun 3
right,
times.
because they see him as, a criminal amongst criminals. So, I mean...
We've always been criminals.
Right, so he is a terrorist in some eyes. Like I said, in the eyes of the police. But like I said, but yes, I'm sure the person on the street where they just got saved from somebody that was gonna, mug them or rob them, Batman is certainly not a terrorist.
Yes.
So like you said, it's just that, that perspective of your life story and how he falls into it. That kind of gives you that lens of how to see him. You know what I'm saying? Is he the guy that's making your life hell as the cop, or is he the guy that's saving your life?
It's in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, he is. But he is acting, I
the
think, out of a good place in his heart. So he, what I'm saying, I think he is, like you said, acting in a good way. He's just, like you said, because he does have that kind of almost immaturity in that the way he's acting out, that he's not doing it in the right way. He's acting out like a child would. You know what I'm saying? Where the kid had something taken away from him, so now he's like a little bad kid. He's slapping people. He's hitting people. You know what I'm saying? Whereas, if he was allowed to mature, he would have dealt with it in a different way. Having at such a young age, I think, like you said, he did stunt his maturity and his
emotional growth.
And he's like stuck in that childish thing where he's acting out.
Yes. Ever since he was 8 years old, he's been Batman. Now, since you're saying terrorism is in the eye of the beholder when it comes to Batman, what about the United States?
If you look at just the way we were founded, the British saw us as terrorists. I mean, in the old rules of war, you weren't supposed to shoot the officers, but that's one of the things that we would do, because they would cause chaos. I mean, we weren't, we didn't fight like they did. We didn't line up in a line and just take shot at each other like idiots. They would hide in trees and be like snipers and just run around and fight unconventionally, kind of like what we ended up facing, in Vietnam and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say we invented terrorism. We certainly invented,
we perfected
guerrilla warfare. What we
Yeah.
consider to be guerrilla warfare or asymmetrical warfare, where we didn't fight by the normal rules. We would break them all the time.
All's fair.
Yeah, exactly. And then we did it in other things. We brought, the destruction of cities in the Civil War. We would burn entire cities.
Wow.
We were the first people to start doing that. And then we did it, in other places. We did it, in Europe. We would do it by bombing, places like Dresden until there was nothing left, or dropping nuclear bombs on Japanese cities. So we regularly would go beyond, everybody else in kind of essentially in the savagery of what we do. I mean, we're essentially like the one that would not act, and then eventually just snap. Because he didn't get into the wars as early as everybody else would in World War I or World War II. We'd get in later, but once we did, we would essentially go in and just basically just
We didn't start it, but we
wipe
sure as
people
hell
out.
ended it.
Yeah, exactly. We wouldn't start the fight, but we certainly would end it. So like I said, we'd always come in late, and we would just start throwing haymakers and start laying out countries.
Oh, a drunk friend.
Yeah, devastating, Italy or devastating Germany, and just completely destroying these areas, essentially as like a punishment to put you back in your place. So whether it was doing it to Mexico or doing it take over the Hawaiian Islands or doing it to the Spanish in the Spanish-American War, that's what we would do. So basically, we would just the quiet guy that would just finally snap and just wreck people.
But but Obama sent drone strikes overseas, and he wanted to kill leaders from Al Qaeda. Did we always get those Al Qaeda leaders with our precise missile strikes or our drone strikes?
No, there's no such thing. I mean, they would always talk about how they would accidentally hit a wedding party where they ended up killing someone's kids along with it.
Hashtag Yemen.
Exactly. I mean, I think the drone thing just gives them that sense of distance because we don't have people on the ground that can get killed. You're doing it from remote, control from Nevada or from Florida.
Yeah.
And I think that distance also makes you colder because now you don't have that risk. So now it's almost like a video game.
Like an Ender's Game.
Yeah, it's a video game now, and you're just doing these runs and dropping bombs, and it doesn't allow you to have the proportionality you normally would have, where you'd be like, all right, we've done enough, because you'd walk through the village and see the devastation.
Have you seen Ender's Game yet?
No.
Oh, I haven't either. I heard the movie wasn't as good as the book, but I heard it's pretty good. We'll talk about it in a bit, but yeah. So that was that was one thing. Did you know that the one little boy that was killed in a drone strike in Yemen, his sister actually just died in the raid?
Really?
The Yemen raid. Yep.
And the one that the Trump just did?
Yep.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my God.
His sister died. Yeah. But Joe, if we're sending over drone strikes and we're bombing people, we're bombing Japan, we're doing it all for a good reason, so we're not terrorists. That's not terror, is it?
Well, it's the people that's being delivered to it is. Because, like I said, because of the proportionality that you're doing it in. It's, what I'm saying, like, before we dropped the 2 bombs, we firebombed the 50 largest cities in Japan.
But they're not...
I mean, it basically was considered to be a country of wood and paper. So it's not like it was here where it was just cement, where it doesn't burn. I mean, they burned literally the cities down to nothing, to the ground. 50 largest cities.
But Joe, we're the
and you
good
would
guys.
destroy like from New York to about Chattanooga in size. That's how, you destroy Charlotte and Chicago, and, the amount of devastation would be, it was, I don't know, at one point they did talk about how they were afraid that they were going to be compared to the Germans.
Wow.
Because they were causing so much damage in Japan.
Holy
shit. They were causing the new atrocities.
But the people that get killed are always bad. We always get the bad guys, and we always do it for the right reason. So we're the good guys.
That's because that's our book that you're reading. I mean, you're never going to make yourself the bad guy. Like I said, they did get into it, for good reasons. They were fighting, bad people, whether it was the Japanese that were causing problems and invading Korea and Manchuria, and they were kidnapping women from Korea and bringing them back and making them sex slaves, and they were just, killing tons of people. I mean, so there is an altruistic reason, but at a certain point, you do go from being the good guy to being the bad guy when you're starting to cause more damage than they were. So essentially, you're crossing over that line to now being, like you said before, the offensive destruction.
Are you saying that you either die the hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain?
100%. As I say, as you get farther away from the start of your dream or your project, the more corrupted it gets. So that's certainly what will happen. As you start out the war, you start out with this altruistic thing of stopping Hitler, stopping Tojo, stopping Mussolini, and in the end, you're dropping bombs so that the French and the British can maintain their colonies in Southeast Asia before the Russians show up. So you're no longer fighting for the betterment of society or the world. You're fighting to maintain colonial possessions in Southeast Asia. So you've been corrupted. You could have stopped it earlier by just simply having an embargo on Japan. You don't have to drop bombs.
I think that's very much the case with Batman, in that, especially in this film, in that he does start out with good intentions, but also he's very much a by any means necessary individual, right? Like the stuff he does in order to get that kryptonite, that chunk of kryptonite, is ridiculous. If you go through all those guys that were working for Lex Luthor that Batman just decimates. He explodes their cars. He grabs one dude's car. Yeah, it was pretty fun. He grabs one dude's a car, and then throws it on top of another car and crushes it. Like, it's ridiculous. It's savagery, to say the least. The thing is as far as the U.S. being a terrorist, it's like you said, it's in the eye of the beholder, you know? There's lots of people that love this country, and I am one of them. I'm glad that I can say this and put it up on a podcast and not have to worry about getting decapitated for the time being. But it always makes you think of Bill Hicks. You've listened to Bill Hicks. Mm-hmm. Bill Hicks was always the person that criticized his government, criticized his country, criticized everything. He was like a provocateur, right? What hacks like Milo Yiannopoulos wish to be. The thing is, I think Bill Hicks was also a true patriot, despite all the shit that he said. And I think that you have to hold your country accountable. If you have a child and your child does something bad, do you let them get away with it, or do you put them in their place, tell them what they did wrong, and wish for them to do better? If you truly love something, it's because you criticize it because you want it to be better.
Right.
You can't just let it get away with anything.
Right.
And say, oh, well, you know, we're allowed to do whatever we want. We're the good guys all the time. You fucking, that's not even naivete. I think it's a willful ignorance.
Oh, definitely. Like I said, it's the kid that you said you never scold, so he never thinks he does wrong. So that'll lead to bigger problems later on, because you've never been, like you said, put in check for past, crimes or past, transgressions. So it just also feeds into itself, and you start acting out bigger and bigger and bigger ways.
Yeah, so anytime there's a protest, these people are called sore losers, and they're called whiners and everything because, apparently women need equal rights, and trans people should be able to live their lives like human beings. Crazy notions like that, and these people are considered unpatriotic because they just won't let their country get away with whatever it wants to.
Well, I think it's that they won't let them. Like they're not falling in line with what the people now see as the nostalgia. That's what it is. I think they see them as people that are harming it and corrupting it. That's more what it is, I think. Like I said, it's because, like I said, in the good old days of Leave It to Beaver, there were no trans people. The wife didn't think of anything besides just taking care of the house and having the martini ready for the husband when he came home. You know what I'm saying? Then anything that challenges that structure, that power structure of, the white male power structure, you know what I'm saying, certainly then dampens it. And like I said, then you're ruining the American dream. You're ruining, what they see as like the cornerstone of what we're based on, like you said, these people being in power and everybody else knowing their place and not rocking the boat and not, making people feel uncomfortable about the fact that they're not treated correctly. You shouldn't even address it. You know what I'm saying? People should know their place and not, speak up like a child. It should be seen but not heard.
Another thing I want to talk about was this scene where the Capitol gets blown up, and what happened in the extended version didn't actually happen in the theatrical version. You remember in the theatrical version, the whole Capitol gets blown up and Superman's like, peace, I'm out, and right. He just goes. But in the extended version, you actually see him helping people,
right,
and being a hero, which would have been nice to have seen. But that's the fake news for you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm telling you the full truth.
Always painting Superman as the bad guy. But when it's actually shown on the news, Alfred sees it, and he has just this look on his face, which I think says this whole crap. I know that this is what's going to send Bruce over the edge. Because this whole time he's been trying to fight against him, tell him, listen, we don't need to worry about this guy, just stop doing what you're doing.
Right.
And Bruce is like, no, he's a bad dude. So all of a sudden this explosion happens, and sure enough, Alfred knows that this is a bad thing that's going to happen. There was an interview where a woman was talking about how her brother actually died in the 9/11 attacks, and she was concerned about what his death would mean and what it would be used for, which we already spoke a little bit about. I think we spoke about it last episode, right? Where we talk about how there may be ulterior motives to doing certain things. And how there still are. Every time somebody brings up torture or waterboarding, they always bring up that picture of the man jumping out of the towers on 9/11. They say, this is why waterboarding isn't a big deal. This is why I support torture.
Right.
Because we need to get these guys. And we will find out in a little bit. That's another point I want to talk about, is just torture in general and how successful it really is. What did you think about Alfred seeing this explosion? Did you see kind of the same thing and just him being like, ah, fuck?
I definitely think he saw it as the first domino that was going to go down and start this whole chain reaction that was going to happen afterwards. I think because of its size, the fact that he said he was on TV, I think it was just, like you said, it's the Capitol. That's such a huge symbol of American freedom and, our government. So I think he definitely saw it as like this big, flash of, what's gonna set everything off and set up this, line of events that's gonna take place. That's eventually, like you said, I think he sees it as what's gonna consume Bruce and might end up bringing him to his end. I guess he's almost like his dad / grandfatherly kind of figure. I think he might see it as, this could be the end of Bruce. This could be like, the thing that brings him to his end as Batman or even as a person. So I think he does fear for him. I think he knows this is going to set him off and this could be his last dance.
Do you think that there's been any events in recent history, or do you think that there's still a potential for those kind of events where now us looking from a more skeptical standpoint, where we would see, okay, this one thing is being used as an excuse to do whatever we want?
Oh, I think so. I definitely think so. I mean, I think that's what 9/11 was used for. Like you said,
well, of course, yeah.
Going beyond Afghanistan. I mean, I think, it was done with Vietnam with the Gulf of Tonkin incident, where they said that we were shot at and we weren't. So I think there'll definitely be something like that. There'll be, like I said, they found, small little events of crime in California to in turn, all the Japanese. So there'll always be looking for something. Now, whether people allow it to happen would depend on the fear factor and how big it gets. Having had a 9/11 already, I think it would definitely leave it open to a possibility of that happening again. You know what I'm saying? It's already happened. It's happened again. We got to do something. And that's when they're going to, do something like, round people up or start kicking people out of the country. Or I think that they're looking for a new trigger point like that.
Now that we talk about it, I think it's something that's already happening right now. When we talk about this ban that's happening and people are saying the ban is unconstitutional, there's no reason to have a ban.
Right.
And they tried to use things like, San Bernardino and the Boston bombing and all these other, and Orlando, which were all domestic terrorist attacks. Right. None of these people came here from anywhere else. They
weren't refugees.
A couple of them came here, but they had papers and everything. They had a right to be here.
San Bernardino was an American citizen.
Exactly.
He was born here.
And Orlando especially.
Right.
Born in New York, raised in America. So the situation in Batman vs. Superman, this Capitol incident, staged. Right? I mean, it happened, but it happened because Lex Luthor was the one that did it. He orchestrated the whole thing, so that way he could have a reason to go ahead and continue his crusade against Superman. Planted the bomb, and essentially he made it all up.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people would call like a false flag attack. Where you basically make it look like somebody else does it, to kind of, like I said, get them going towards, like this. That's how this had happened in the Spanish-American War. The Spanish blew up Lusitania. the Maine, and they don't know what actually happened, but they think that that's what happened. It was done on purpose to get America into the war. So same kind of thing. You kind of instigate it by creating this event to kind of set things in motion. So yeah, that's basically what he's doing. He's essentially giving history a nudge in a certain direction to try to get certain events to start happening, to get his plan into motion.
Now, if he were looking for another reason to justify it, could he have just made something up like, I don't know, a Bowling Green massacre?
Oh, that's very possible. You can go with alternative facts. They've been very popular lately.
This was something that you actually brought to my attention because you are a million times more educated or just aware of this stuff. The 1% doctrine.
Right.
Now, what does the 1% doctrine state?
Well, it's basically the idea that if there's a 1% chance of something happening, nuclear attack, a terrorist attack, whatever it is, you should treat it as 100% chance that it's likely to happen. So essentially, if there's any chance of anything, you treat it like it's an absolute. So it sets you up for a lot of action.
For all the people that told me I was looking way too into this, when I said, "Oh, it's just about the war on terror and all, and it's an allegory," and then going, "Michael, it's just a movie." Here's the part where I tell you to fuck yourselves, because Dick Cheney quoted literally from the 1% doctrine, which he wrote.
Yeah.
He wrote an entire book.
Yeah.
Jesus, how do you write?
Well, it's like his whole theory. That's his whole like.
Anyone a book deal.
Yeah.
He said, if there's a 1% chance that Pakistani scientists are helping Al-Qaeda build or develop a nuclear weapon, we have to treat it as a certainty in terms of our response. It's not about our analysis, it's about our response. Bruce Wayne talks to Alfred and says, if we believe there's even a 1% chance that he is our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute certainty and we have to destroy him. Literally the words from that film.
Yeah.
Batman is the right-wing hardcore conservative.
He's the neocon that's always looking to fight the next fight. And then when you have that kind of a mentality of 1%, you're going to find him. I mean, think about if you lived your life like that. You know, if you walk into a bar and your girlfriend's ex-boyfriend's there, maybe there is 1% chance you might get into a fight with the guy because he sees you with his new girlfriend.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, you can't go around punching
everybody. So, like, literally, if you look at it, every 100 times you walk into that bar, there might be one time. And the other 99, everything's fine.
Nothing would have happened, yeah.
But yes.
But you make it happen 100%. Because you see it essentially as better safe than sorry. But like I said, but you're treating it at such a low level at 1%. Like I said, that it's at that point, then you become the bad guy. You should say you're taking pre-crime at that point. Because nothing's happened. You're just assuming, hey, if something's possibly going to happen, I got to act.
Because Alfred literally says to him, this man is not our enemy.
Right.
And he said, and he goes, yeah, but he could be. We've seen the damage that he can cause. Do you think that Batman is launching this crusade against Superman out of revenge, or out of, we talked about the pre-crime, out of the idea that he could do that stuff again? Or is it a mixture of the both?
I think it's almost like the mentality of never again kind of a thing. Like I said, he saw the devastation that he wrought on the city, and says if there's 1% chance of that ever happening again, we got to stop him. I think that's basically his raison d'etre, his reason for being is to stop this from ever occurring, you know, and ever having that kind of, you know, devastation happen. Like you said, when he takes that girl into his arms, you know, in the middle of that devastation, I think that's his mentality is I can't have this kid go through this like I did as a kid. I can't have this happen on this large of a scale where thousands of kids are losing their parents. So he says if I have to, you know, fight this guy to stop it from ever happening again, that's what he needs to do.
It really hit him hard.
Yeah.
And that's so similar to the whole 9/11 situation too. That was a terrible, which is an understatement, a terrible, terrible tragedy.
Right.
And yet it is thrown around so lackadaisically, in my opinion, that do we want another 9/11 to happen?
Right.
Do we want another 9/11? Well, then we have to be able to do whatever we want to do so another 9/11 doesn't happen.
Right. Yeah, I mean, use it as justification of everything at that point then. Invading their own country. Like we were talking about earlier, torture. I mean, like you said, if that's your
we were
1%
trying to prevent
doctrine,
terrorism.
Yeah, for that 1% doctrine, that leaves you open, you know, to be able to do anything. Then there are no rules.
Batman actually says in the Injustice comic book, which is the comic book series that's based off the Injustice fighting game, very underrated, by the way. Super good. But that's the whole thing in which Lois Lane dies, Superman, in this case, vows never again, and starts taking very drastic and radical actions to ensure safety. I say in quotes. And Batman goes, if you can justify something one time, you could justify it over and over again. If you can justify it once. And that's been the case in general. In my history, I have done some pretty shitty things. Not terrible things, not life-threatening things, but I'd done some shitty things. And all it took was one time for me to be like, oh, well, I deserve to do this. And then could keep on doing it over and over and over again.
Right, once you compromise yourself, it's easier the second and third time. Each time you do it after that, I think it becomes even easier. Like I said, whether it's cheating on your girlfriend, someone trying drugs for the first time.
Like, I didn't say that's what it was. It was, but that's I didn't say.
Like I said, it's human nature that the hardest time is the first time because you're going against probably what you were taught. That it's that you don't treat people like that or you don't do those kind of things. But once you've done it and then you have had no repercussions, most likely you're gonna end up doing it again because I did it last time I didn't get in trouble, so I'll do it again. And then you're like, all right, I've already done this thing 15 times. I'm an expert at it. I'm not gonna get caught, and so you do it again. And it just like you said, it feeds into it. Whether it's doing these things, whether it's on international level, so you start toppling governments in other countries for the benefit of companies. So you overthrow governments in Guatemala so that the United Fruit Company can grow more Chiquita bananas, or you overthrow governments in Argentina for copper mines or whatever it is. It's been done, nothing happened. You keep doing it because you get the benefit, and you're not getting the negative of it. So certainly, it's something that just becomes easier. You get corrupted. That's how you get corrupted easier because you're not getting the penalty that comes with it.
Now, in the case of Batman versus Superman, Batman gets corrupted very easily. They don't show the first time that he kills to do what he has to do, but holy shit. And we even saw in the Dark Knight Returns animated movies that Batman doesn't kill. He'll cripple a person, he'll do some pretty fucked up shit, but he won't kill. That's still a line that he doesn't necessarily cross. In the comic book, I think he crosses it once.
Right.
Yeah, it's just once, because even with the Joker, he snaps his neck and paralyzes him. He doesn't kill him. But he goes to these extreme measures, and this is something we already talked about, these extreme measures to protect humanity from Superman, but he hurts a lot of people in the process, which is kind of like the whole idea of starting things off with good intentions, but who really is the terrorist at a certain point? Who really is the monster? Who is the bad guy? Does the line get blurred? And that really goes straight to Alfred's whole quote, where should I try to British this up?
Sure, let's see what you got.
All right, here we go. Gotta get into character. Everything's changed. Men fall from the sky. The gods hurl thunderbolts. Innocents die. That's how it starts. The fever, the rage. The feeling of powerlessness that turns good men cruel. Which is something that I mentioned before, in which he does feel powerless, and he ends up doing these terrible, terrible things. The way I looked at it was he's branding people, right? Alfred goes, oh, you're branding them now? And he sees that Batman's taking more extreme measures than he ever did.
Right.
Batman, on his side, sees it as he's doing what he has to do in order to stop Superman. Alfred sees it for what it really is. In my opinion, this is what it is. It's that he is not ready to fight Superman yet, so he's taking out his aggressions elsewhere.
Right.
And he's branding people, he's doing bad things, he's doing things that Batman normally would not have done, because when Batman is confident, Batman doesn't need to do those things. Like a bully, right? If a bully gets abused at home and they can't fight their parents, they take it out on whoever is at school.
The weaker. They
need that power. So this reminded me of torture. When the United States was in such a moment of peril, in which we were, I think, sucker punched was how Toby Keith put it, in Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue, where he says that we got a swollen eye and we're looking out of it, and we're gonna put a boot in your ass and all that stuff. We might not have been able to exactly find all the people that did it. We can find suspected people that did it.
Right. We
can put them in a prison, put them in a black site, and do whatever we want to them, right?
Yeah. Like I said, it's like you said, it's that feeling of powerlessness that gets you to turn bad. Where, like you said, you can't catch the guy, so you catch, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and you end up waterboarding him to find out, try to find out what you can. But you take it to the extreme point where the guy at that point will tell you he wears panties just to stop, drowning him.
Yes.
So essentially you end up, in your pursuit of trying to do good, you end up causing more harm and end up corrupting what you're trying to do because now the information you're getting isn't going to be no longer be credible because this guy will tell you whatever you want to hear. So you stop drowning him. So I think, like you said, just that powerlessness to be able to find this guy because they weren't able to get him because they lost, they took their eye off the ball and basically changed their focus to Iraq, so they didn't end up finding the person. They started getting desperate for results, and that's why I think they ended up turning to this kind of corruptness of like I said, we're always supposed to be the good guys, and the good guys don't do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, the good guys sometimes do pretty shitty things.
Yeah,
in order to keep getting good. If I could make another Batman reference, The Dark Knight Rises, Gordon talks about how he had to do a lot of compromise, and he had to let Batman take the fall for Harvey Dent's crimes. And he says sometimes you just gotta put your hands in the dirt, in the muck. And he said that Batman's the one that did it for him. Batman did the dirty work, so he could still come out clean.
Right.
And
so that's why they use the CIA to do that kind of stuff.
Yes.
That's why the military stays clean. So that's why they use, they'll use other groups or those do rendition and send them to Egypt and let them do it. You know what I'm saying? You're still handing the person over knowing that's what's going to happen to them. So you may not actually be physically torturing the person, but because you gave them to these people that you know are going to do it, you're, by extension, essentially doing it.
So you know what's going to happen, yeah.
Yeah, so you're essentially still corrupting yourself, but you're giving yourself that illusion of almost innocence of like, I'm not actually doing it. So it kind of gives you that, false sense of, being clean on it.
Now, did you read the CIA's torture report?
No, I have not read the whole thing.
I looked through some of it. It's available for PDF. You can look at it right online. There's actually a book printed version of it. Very interesting, very fucked up stuff. This next segment is right out of it, right out of the torture report. The committee reviewed 20 of the most frequent and prominent examples of purported counterterrorism successes that the CIA has attributed to the use of its enhanced interrogation techniques and found them to be wrong in fundamental respects. In some cases, there was no relationship between the cited counterterrorism success and any information provided by the detainees during or after the use of the CIA's enhanced interrogation techniques. Enhanced interrogation, of course, torture.
Oh, I like the rebranding.
Yeah. The whole putting a bow on something that's terrible to make it look a little bit better. But this is, that's torture, and that whole thing there specifically said, all the good information we got out of this whole thing didn't actually have anything to do with torture.
Yeah, a lot of people said that you're better off not doing it because you're better off building a rapport with the person and actually getting information out of them as opposed to essentially trying to force it out of them. But like I said, it's when you're desperate, you start, turning to things that are ugly, in desperation. So they start flailing for, new ways of getting your information because maybe the old ways aren't working as fast as they want because they need, certain level of results in a certain given time, so they get desperate and these kind of ugly things end up happening. They end up corrupting the system and corrupting, like I said, the information they're getting. So they may have gotten good information, but if it gets buried in a pile of misinformation, how do you pick out which is true, which isn't?
Yeah, what studies? How do you figure out the science exactly of? All right, we found out that this guy's cousin actually has connections to Al Qaeda, and he told us because. What? Because we pureed spicy hummus and shoved it up his ass?
Right.
Which actually happened, by the way.
Really?
Oh, yeah, dude. There was a lot of rectal shit, with pun unintended, in the torture. Like, yeah, there was waterboarding. There was force feeding, too, because some prisoners would starve themselves.
Right.
So they would put them in a chair and just shove tubes down their throats. They would shove tubes up their asses and feed them that way. Well, which technically doesn't actually feed them, but that was just... It was torture, and the stuff they showed you in the Zero Dark 30 movie was just the tip of the iceberg,
right?
With the stuff they did, and it's like you said, someone will tell you that he wears women's panties to just stop, to stop you from torturing them,
right? And
it's terrible. Gitmo hasn't been shut down yet. Didn't Obama say he was going to shut down Gitmo?
Yeah, for 8 years.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is that he could say he wants to shut it down, but if he doesn't get the money from Congress to actually do it and transport people,
That's true.
Nothing much happens.
I think another thing is that there's a problem that you end up creating more of a problem. If you don't do things the right way, in an economic standpoint, like you said, I'll save a penny today, but I'll have to spend $10 tomorrow. It's the same thing. If you put an accurate drone strike and don't kill innocent people, you don't have people that now have a vendetta.
Right.
Because I feel a lot of terrorists are just Batman in their own right.
Right.
If your whole family was killed by the infidels from wherever, from America, from another country, then you're going to grow up and your whole life's purpose is going to be to stop these people.
Right. But I think I'll never get that from a drone strike, though. I think in order to do that, you would need to have like the sniper on the ground. You would need to put people in harm's way in order to get that kind of precision. Because the missile itself, I mean, it's going to have a blast radius bigger than the size of the person.
Yeah.
So if someone's in a car, someone's within 10 feet, they're going to die. 20 feet, they're going to die. That's why you need to have, like I said, the unfortunate need of putting people on the ground to get that more close quarter kill. So this way you don't have the collateral damage of killing, like you said, the kid, the guy's uncle, who ends up getting all those other kids to now, turned against him because, like you said, now they're getting revenge, just like anybody else would. Just like if, it happened to somebody else, they'd want, justice. And they just, in their own version of it.
At another point, Batman ends up hacking a phone. So, like, once again, fuck you to anyone that says that this is not an allegory in its own right. I believe it totally is. Because what do we know about the U.S. and hacking phones?
Right. I mean, they've been doing it forever. I mean, even Batman even did it in was it The Dark Knight?
Correct, in The Dark Knight.
When he was hacking like every phone in the entire city.
Sonar
to try to make the whole entire city took a sonar. It's just
like a submarine, Mr.
I mean, it was started out with people like J. Edgar Hoover wiretapping people illegally so they could spy on Martin Luther King or whatever it happens to be. So it's just something that that's always just been done. I mean, it was a lot easier. I guess probably even easier now with the computers, I guess. But they used to just literally just tap a wire outside your house and be able to listen to all your phone calls or whatever. But it's just, as far as I'm concerned, like they always say, oh, if he didn't do anything wrong, what do you got to worry about? But my thing is, I shouldn't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Like it's supposed to be safe in your person and your papers. No one's supposed to be able to, spy on you unless they have probable cause. It shouldn't be, let me see what you got and then I'll see if there's probable cause. At that point, then I don't have freedom. At that point, I might as well be walking through checkpoints.
Well, yeah, and it's that was something that my girlfriend and I argued about a little while ago when the Patriot Act ended.
Right.
And she said, "Oh, the Patriot Act ends today," and I was like, "Yeah, isn't it awesome?" And she goes, "No, it was keeping us safe," and I was like, "What?" So we both had very different ideas as to what this did, and if you say it's a good reason, so we can do it, and the whole idea of if you don't have anything to worry about, why bother, right?
Right.
And this was another which book was it? It was a comic book called Justice, which artwork by Alex Ross. It was amazing, and unfortunately I don't remember the writer. I never remember the writer of this, but it was really good. And there's this moment where Batman and Superman are standing side by side, and Superman's gloating, and he says, Gotham's not like Metropolis. You can't do things the same way there. In Gotham, it's a lot more unruly. In Metropolis, people are better behaved, and it's only the extreme criminals that commit crimes. And Batman just says, yeah, well, in Gotham, we don't have a man that can look through walls. So how do you think everyone's going to behave in Metropolis?
Right.
Because someone's always watching. Do you think they're behaving because they're really good people, or do you think they're behaving out of fear?
Right.
So that's a whole thing.
That creates the whole police state situation then, like East Germany or something where, people are spying on each other, the government's spying on them. I mean, Benjamin Franklin said that if to give up some sense of freedom for a sense of security, you deserve neither. Then.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because freedom in and of itself is a dangerous thing because people can do things with that freedom. But like I said, you gotta live and die with it. You can't give it up, for a false sense of safety because you can never really truly be 100% safe.
If you just create a better class of person, you don't have to worry about what people do with their freedom.
Well, that's the main thing that you have to deal with. Like we talked about earlier, you have to deal with the underlying problems that will create, whether it's basic street crime and with Batman or, other levels, whether it's coming with terrorism, you know what I'm saying? So if you start instead of having only funding going to madrasas, you know what I'm saying, or something like that, or going to, radicalize people in Ireland, whatever it happens to be, you start, doing things that are more altruistic and giving them, regular educations and stuff like that, instead of just giving this one-sided kind of perspective, you would start solving a lot more problems.
And now I think everything will be great with the education system, right?
Well, of course, we got an education secretary now that doesn't know what a student loan is.
So she knows what the words are. Another thing that was very interesting about this was that Bruce Wayne was able to get more information than Batman, which is something Alfred says to him. Despite the fact that he had to go to a fucking underground bare knuckle brawl in order to do this, but he got more information from that than he did as going out on the streets and branding people and everything. And Joe, for the life of me, I kept searching for it, but I couldn't find it. Apparently, there were people that got more information from a terror suspect through a game of chess than they did through torture.
Right.
You heard about this too, right?
Yeah, I've heard about it in a couple of situations. Where, like I said, it was chess. Another one was drinking tea, where you kind of, in treating them as human and not the enemy, or as some people would say like a vermin that needs to be exterminated. That I'd say they may not give up 110% of the information they know, but they'll certainly, start, giving more information, and just kind of becoming more open and just allowing themselves to kind of letting their guard down, which then, like as time goes on, they build that relationship and rapport, that will open up and that'll start allowing the information to flow. I just feel like when they do this kind of thing like with torture, they try to beat it out of them as opposed to instead of a person letting it pour out of themselves, and they kind of put themselves in a hole by doing that.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I think it's kind of easy. If you put someone in an underground cave, hypothetically, which Gitmo is close, but it's not that. And if you strip them, which once again, I'm not saying it's right to put people in this situation, strip them of these rights and basic things. But if I put you in a hole for 5 weeks straight, you're going to start to miss a lot of things.
Yeah.
You're going to start to miss human interaction. So maybe I play a game of cards with you every week, once a week. Or maybe you give me some information that turns out to be good, you get a cupcake. It's simple shit like that. And there was a segment of Torture and John Oliver too, where they spoke about it, and there was this guy who's very cold and scary, and he said that he'll talk to these terror suspects and tell them straight up, you're not getting out of here. You were here forever. But you have a family. You want your kid to go to a good school? You want your wife to be able to get by on the bills? Let's talk. Let's work something out. You find something that you know that you're going to be able to manipulate them with, and that's that.
Right, you find a motivating factor for them. A reason, like you said, they may not be getting out, but you give them a reason to kind of look towards the future. And the future is, like you said, in their family and in their kids. So that's what their motivating factor becomes. This way you don't, do it by the kind of raw pressure and physical beatings. You do it by appealing to essentially their humanity of their family. By saying, you've, let's say, as long as it's not an unusual case where the person isn't completely innocent, but they caught someone that actually is part of it, say an ISIS or an Al-Qaeda, I'm saying, you need to talk to them like, look, you did some bad things, so you're not getting out of here. But like you said, you can make, life better for your family by simply giving you some information. Where's the money guy? Where's the hideout? Where's the whatever? Like I said, you give them a motivating factor of, we'll help your family, get out, get them out of that country, or, help them fund them with their education, or like I said, whatever happens to be, give them protection.
You know what I would do? I'd put them in a prison where no one's ever going to see them again. And then I would use all the different ways that they had to be motivated to get them to do my dirty work, and all the most dangerous terror suspects, and then I would put a bomb on each of them, okay, and in addition I would just put a bomb in their necks that explodes if they disobey my orders, and I would send them out to get my dirty work done. And I don't know, some sort of squad maybe.
Right.
I don't know what I would call them exactly.
I don't know.
But shit. Maybe like a squad that is going on a suicide mission, or literally if they're terrorists, they might be suicide bombers.
There you
So
go.
I don't know, some sort of squad of suicide. Listen, I don't know. Okay, I don't know exactly what I would call it. But
They should make a movie about that.
yeah, you know what? I probably should. It would fall apart in the second act. That's what I would do. But yeah, so Batman hacks a fucking phone. Batman does a lot of things in this film that we do not necessarily approve of. And he ends up at this moment where he is, where he has Superman under his foot, under his heel. He's cutting him to pieces, which is, he scratches his cheek technically with this kryptonite spear, and he finds out that they both have moms with the same name.
Martha.
Why did you say that name? What did you think of the Martha moment? Everyone hates the Martha moment.
It is super cheesy, but I do think it gives you that humanity, though, that connection between them, that everybody's got a mom.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to take care of their mom and make sure their mom is safe. And that's, you know, Batman can't save his mom. His mom is gone now, but,
Oh, dude.
you know, Superman's mom is still there. That's why he makes that promise to him.
How good was that? Martha won't die tonight. I was
Exactly.
like, oh, fuck, yes!
Yeah, exactly. It's in America.
That was so good. Martha won't die tonight. That moment, my girlfriend, when we went to see it in theaters, she caught it before it happened. Because, like, she saw it and she was like, wait, both their moms are named Martha? And I was like, yes, shh. And she was like, well, why is that the case? I was like, that's how it is in the comics. She's like, well, they should have changed it. So she totally caught that ahead of time. But I loved it. I think that it was definitely, in my opinion, one of the better parts of the film. A better detective version of Batman would have been able to figure it out. I honestly don't think that this version of Batman in BVS was Batman at his prime.
Right.
He's a little older, but he's also very unhinged. He's acting erratically. He's doing crazy things. So I could see how he would miss the whole Martha part. Because guess what? He doesn't see him as Clark Kent.
Right.
He doesn't see him as a human. He's the other.
Right.
He's Superman, and that's
the alien.
it. He's the alien. That's exactly it. Just similar to how we don't see these people as people that are leaving a war-torn country. We see refugees. We see someone that gets locked up and deported. They're an illegal.
Right.
They're not a person. They're not a person that gave up everything to come here and work a job that you yourself won't even fucking work.
Right. I think the only moment that kind of broke through with that was when they found that picture of that baby that had died on the shores.
Oh shit!
When the boats capsized. I think that was
for
the moment.
the Syrian.
Right. I think that was a moment where people humanized him a bit. But yeah, for the most part, they'll always they won't look at him the same way. They won't think at him as, you know, these people are fleeing, you know, with their families, and they never see it as the same kind of human moment.
Yeah, and I like the whole idea of, you know, we're all someone's son or daughter or whatever, and, you know, does that mean that some people aren't pieces of shit? No, it doesn't, unfortunately. This humanization was very similar to me, to this whole, do you know Terry Holdbrooks?
Yeah.
Terry Holdbrooks was actually a former guard for Guantanamo. And now he speaks out against it. He actually does have a book called Traitor, with a question mark. Traitor? Sorry, that just reminded me of Finn from episode 7. Traitor! It's called Traitor because that's another case, right? Like whenever anyone calls the government out or calls the military out on its shit and tries to uphold the standard of justice that they believe in, they're known as a traitor.
Right.
Edward Snowden uncovered war crimes, and he's a traitor. Chelsea Manning uncovered war crimes, and she's a traitor. Terry Holdbrooks is talking about the war crimes that are committed in Guantanamo, and there's a lot of fucked up shit. He's a traitor.
Well, it's like, you know, anybody that lets out secrets you don't want out, you know, even if it's your friends, you know, that tells your girlfriend about how you did something, you know, what do you look at him as? You know, he's a traitor to the man code.
You shouldn't have told her, even though you did the right thing.
Right, exactly. Even though you did the upstanding thing, that if it was a kid and someone did something wrong, you always tell the kid, you know, tell someone, you know, that this happened.
Yeah.
But when you're older, the rules kind of change. You know, there's certain rules that are okay to break and not tell anybody. So it certainly has that, you know, like I said, some person's traitor, you know, is somebody else's truth teller.
Yeah.
You know, in that sense.
I like the Martha moment, especially because it brought Batman back to his senses, and it shows that how broken of a person he really is. And this whole time he was seeing Superman as the other, and at no point did he stop to think this guy has a mom. And what do you know? This mom has the same name as mine. And it was a humanizing moment. And I think that no matter who you're afraid of, or weary of, or uncertain of, if you take a moment to get to know someone like them, you see things differently. I empathize greatly with the Muslim community facing a lot of persecution because I have Muslim friends.
Right.
And I don't even think of them as a Muslim first. I think one of my best friends from college, he loves the John Wick movies. He likes a lot of action movies. He likes playing video games. He's really savvy with computers. And he's a cool dude, and he's fun to eat with and hang out with and watch shows with. But Islam is just a part of who he is. Right. In my opinion, it's not entirely who he is overall. I have a different experience too, because you can see undocumented, you can see the illegals and see them as criminals and they're taking your jobs and all this other stuff. At 15 years old, I was living in a house full of day laborers. And it wasn't the day laborers that kicked me out of a house at that time. It was, a white upper middle class family that I was living with. And I ended up living in a house of day laborers. And every time I went into that kitchen to get some food, I would have to talk to them. And we'd talk in Spanish. I'd find out about the guy from Ecuador that's missing his family, and he's trying to make whatever money he can to send back to them. And he's just getting shit over and over again from all the people he has to work for. And he doesn't have any health insurance. And people are people.
Well, I think just a lack of exposure to other people is what causes a lot of their fear.
It's easy.
Like I said, by sitting down with them and having dinner with them, you get to know them a lot better. Do you see, like I said, whether it's, they say like that's what made it harder with politics. The people no longer had their families there, so they didn't eat dinner together. They didn't see him at the sports game, so they didn't see him as a dad and as a husband. They just always saw them as the political opponent, which is what makes it so much harder now. Like before, like I said, with old sports players, they used to go out together, so they didn't have that same kind of animosity and fighting between themselves. It's just, like I said, when you see people outside of that one arena and you see them like in everyday life, it softens the way you look at them. Like you kind of humanize them more. You kind of understand them, you empathize with them more because you see the stuff that goes on. When they're helping because their kid hurt their ankle, and you kind of know what that's like because you had that with your son or what happens to be. It's like some of those kind of just interactions where, like I said, if you do sit down with, like I said, some of my friends I worked with at Post that I became really good friends with, or a Muslim as well. Like I said, you sit down with them, you're having, eating food together. Like I said, you go into lunch and, you're playing soccer together or whatever it happens to be, and you kind of, having these common moments together. Like I said, you don't see them as one thing or another. You just see them as a person.
As a person.
Who just happens to, celebrate this religion, or just happens to, be gay, or just happens to be whatever. Yeah. Like I said, people are people, and just, everybody has their own, smaller characters to make them up, but that's not all, who they are as a whole.
Which, like, holy fuck, have you had halal food? Like, if that doesn't just bring peace to this world, I don't know what will.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like I said, the food is great. I mean, I've had, whether it's Persian or Turkish or, yeah. Like I said, it's just, like I said, it's just, the spices of life, just the variety, of having, all the different kinds of food. That's what, I'm a big foodie when it comes back to this
Batman and Superman should have had a meal.
Exactly.
A meal together. But yeah, I don't know. A lot of people. So once again, I just think Batman's wounded, and he's not perfect in this movie, and that's something that we should realize about ourselves also. That maybe we're not always acting so altruistically, and we're not always acting as the protectors, and that we are still very wounded from bad things that have happened, and we're still holding on to those.
Yeah, we hope you have that Martha moment where you do get, that moment of clarity where you get smacked back into reality and realize that this person that you've been hating is a person just like you, and has the same kind of feelings and has a mom, and, it gives them back to that, that human feeling, so you don't no longer see them as an other or someone that's, should be extinguished. I think that's what you got to kind of move towards and kind of, push in other people to kind of make those kind of connections so we don't always have that distance between us.
Which, do you know what movie I was actually surprised they did that in?
Which
American Sniper.
Really?
Did you see American Sniper?
Yeah.
Remember the rival sniper that was made up for the film? And there was a rival sniper who was apparently an Olympic level sniper, and at one point they show him in his war-torn town, and he has a wife and a child. And they don't make a big deal of it, but he's like, all right, I gotta go. And he leaves. And I thought that was great. Because you obviously saw from Chris Kyle's side, and he was leaving behind his family.
Right.
To go and fight. But this guy was also leaving behind his family too.
Right.
And that's the case. War is hell. Every person that dies, I don't care how alone you are, that person belongs to somebody. That person means something to someone.
Yeah, someone will miss them. Exactly.
Yeah, and it doesn't make things easy. It doesn't make things right or wrong. There's a lot of grays when it comes to ethical dilemmas like that. I'm sure even the worst person in the world, somebody loves them.
Right, and somebody will mourn them.
Yeah, so it's just crazy to think about. You think about the worst person, and that if they were gone, who would miss them? But yeah, the Martha moments, say what you want, but if we're lucky, we still have a mom. And, at one point we did. And that's that just try to find that common ground.
Right.
It may not be having a mom, but it may be something else, and you never realize how much you and your perceived enemy have in common.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Joe, any closing statements for part 2?
Just that, remember everybody's got a mom. And maybe she's named Martha.
That's good. Everybody's got a mom. And you know what? I think that you can always have the chance to do the right thing. Because Batman did have that redeeming moment.
Right.
He had that Martha won't die tonight moment, which meant just as much to him as it did to Superman.
Right.
And then he decimated an entire warehouse full of dudes in order to make sure she didn't die. They did, but she didn't.
That's right.
Yeah. So, Joe, I want to thank you very much for being here with me for part 2 of our Batman vs. Superman episode of the Politipop podcast. Once again, feel free to contact us. You can find us on Twitter at PolitiPopPod. Email us using politipopcast@gmail.com. Look up our show notes and sources on politipoppodcast.wordpress.com. For the Politipop podcast, I've been Mike Booch.
And I'm Joe.
Just like McLovin. Until next time, part 3, where we discuss the third parties of this film and what they represent. Never stop thinking, never stop learning. No matter what you're watching, no matter what you're reading, no matter what you're taking in, always make sure to read between the lines.
Martha.
Why did you say that name? Never stop thinking.
Yeah, punch drunk.
I'm trying to think of one person's names. I'm too tired right now.
Prince.
Yeah. Oh, Prince. Fuck. Well, now I gotta say that for the next one. Jonathan and Martha Kent.
What do you think it would be in Lois Lane's editorial when she, did her background on Superman?
Well,
she would be in there.
She would have mentioned Martha Kent.
You don't think so? She went to Kansas.
Remember she ended up not running it?
She buried the story?
Yeah, she buried the story because Clark spoke to her. And he was like, my dad died to protect my secret and blah, blah, blah. So then she went to Perry White. This is a Man of Steel. She went to Perry White and she was like, I'm not going to run it. And he's like, wait, what? You're not going to? And she's like, nope. And he goes, I think you found something out there, something you don't want people to know. So there's that whole thing.
Right.
But yeah, she didn't publicly say what Superman's identity was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, no wonder why Lex fucking Luthor figured it out.
Things happening.
And which is what we were talking about before, right? The offensive, defense, and preeminent,
Right, preeminent.
proactive. Some bad shit. I'm gonna edit that out.